My name is Natalie Whitaker. I am 32. On Thanksgiving afternoon in Boston, my parents block me at their back bay door and tell me I am not invited. Through the opening, I see my sister Alex sitting in my seat at the long table. I see Jenna, the friend who once knew every version of me, laughing with my family. I am holding a pecan pie I baked at dawn. The air is warm for November. The crystal is already poured. This is not a mix-up, it is a message. In my family, winning is worship. My father Charles calls it standards. My mother Victoria calls it tradition. When pressure rises, they stop pretending. When markets dip and clients demand answers, they tighten the circle and rewrite the story. They call it loyalty while they lock doors. When I ask to see the numbers behind a new return, I am told to focus on smiles and seating charts. When I request documentation for a transfer, my access vanishes the next morning. The rule is simple. A Whitaker never shows weakness. A Whitaker never asks why. They have no idea what I'm building behind my quiet face. I work in silence for months. I build an evidence locker with mirrored drives and checksum logs. I tag every email header and calendar invite. I track wire trails and device IDs. I learn the bylaws that govern proxy votes. I watch $1.2 million move out of my trust in 3 neat tranches, and I record each timestamp. I build Northbridge strategies client by client and move 10% of every invoice into a legal reserve. When they finally look my way, the record will not bend for them. The door camera blinks red as the door closes. I make a promise to myself and to every person who trusted our name. This is not revenge, this is respect. This is boundaries. This is justice delivered without a raised voice and with proof that holds. Subscribe before you hear the shocking ending. Back Bay looks like a postcard. And for most of my childhood, my family tries to live like one. Our townhouse sits on Commonwealth Avenue, all polished brass and perfect wreaths in winter. My father Charles is the architect of the image. He is 63 now, still upright, still convinced that pressure makes diamonds and excuses. He founded Whitaker Capital Partners 35 years ago and shaped it into a name that opens doors in Boston. My mother, Victoria, runs the flank. She sits on arts boards, knows every donor chair by first name, and treats a seating chart like a chessboard. My sister Alexandra, or Alex, is 35, Harvard Business School, now Chief Operating Officer. She is the golden child by design and by practice. The camera always finds her smile. It skips right past me. I am the reliable one. I study at Boston University and fall in love with brand architecture and crisis work. I join the family firm in marketing because that is the path I am handed. I write copy that soothes anxious clients. I build decks that make risk look like vision. I am the person who takes the late call and says, I have it handled. I am the person who sends a clean draft by sunrise. No one throws a parade for that. They call it being a team player and they tell me it is expected. Favoritism is not abstract in our house. It has receipts. In June 2006, when Alex turned 17, my parents surprise her with a new BMW. The sticker price is about $65,000. There is a red bow in the driveway. 3 years later, when I turned 17, I get a used Honda Civic and a speech about grit. I say thank you. I drive it with pride. I also learn how the mirror game works. In 2000, my parents wire $250,000 to Alex for her Beacon Hill condo down payment. I see the transfer slip because I am asked to prepare the family gifts binder for tax season. That July, I ask for $5,000 for a digital analytics certification that would help me modernize outreach. My mother mails me a spa gift card and a note that says, relax. I keep the note in a folder labeled reminders. There are more small cuts. In December 2008, after a rough year in the markets, Alex loses a demanding client. My father calls it a narrative failure and points at me in a meeting. 2 days later, he approves a budget of $98,000 for Alex to host a private dinner at a club for prospect cultivation. That same week, I submit a $12,000 request for new outreach software. The portal kicks it back as non-essential. On February 12, 2022, a pipe bursts at my parents' house while the caretaker is off. I call the plumber, pay the bill of $896, and send the receipt. My mother promises to reimburse me. In March, she texts me that a Whitaker does not bill family. I write paid in my ledger and move on. Being the reliable one is not just money, it is invisible labor. I pick up a tux from the tailor when my father is stuck at a meeting. I rewrite a keynote at 11:45 p.m. when the original reads like a brochure. I drive my mother home at 1 a.m. after a fundraiser because the town car never arrives. I walk the dog when my sister needs to make a dinner at the club. I am the buffer, the fixer, the person who keeps the gears quiet. If I ask why the gears grind, I am told to mind my tone. The pattern hardens in 2024. In late March, I spot unusual movement while preparing a deck. I am pulling quarterly figures when I see large transfers into and out of feeder accounts with labels that do not match the statements. The phrasing is liquidity facilitation. The timing does not align. I bring a printout to my father. He glances at it and closes the folder with 2 fingers. Some matters are beyond your remit, he says. Stick to messaging. His voice is flat. His eyes are a warning. I leave his office and write the date in my notebook. March 27, 2024. In April, I start documenting everything. I log dates, attendees, and subject lines. I save email headers and calendar invites. I flag a change in the reporting format on April 23rd. On May 7th, my access to a set of accounts is restricted with a need-to-know tag. I open a ticket to ask why. The response says realignment of responsibilities. On June 3rd, Alex takes over a pitch I have built for a real estate group in the Seaport. She presents my deck. The client signs in July. I receive no credit line, no thank you, and a reminder that loyalty means letting the firm shine as a whole. Jenna Lowell is in my periphery through all of this. We met years ago and became close when she joined the firm 2 years after me. She holds a Series 7. She is polished and social and quick with a compliment. My mother says Jenna feels like family. She is at our dinners, our lake weekends, our holiday photos. When I mention the odd transfers to her, she redirects to client experience and smiles. She says, focus on wins. When I speak about building a modern practice, she nods and says she is proud of me. Later, I will read emails that show how those conversations travel, but that is not yet. For now, she sits next to Alex in photos, and I tell myself I am reading too much into angles and distance. I pay attention to how power is organized at the firm. Whitaker Capital Partners is a Delaware C corporation. There are shareholders and bylaws. There is a process for calling an extraordinary general meeting. There is a proxy framework. I do not plan to use any of that. I learn it because I am a strategist who believes knowledge is a form of insurance. I also start thinking about what it would look like to build something that belongs to me. Not a rebellion. A practice that reflects my values, where clients are told the truth even when it is hard, and where success is not measured by who gets the bow on the car. By midsummer, I make a decision. I will leave. I will take only what I own. My ideas, my relationships that are public, my work ethic. On August 29, 2024, I file Northbridge Strategies as an LLC. I sign a small biotech in September at $12,000 a month for reputation management. I sign a regional hospital system at $18,000 a month for physician communications. I build a client tracker in a simple spreadsheet and a secure archive in the cloud. 10% of every invoice flows into a legal reserve account. I keep receipts for every purchase. I keep my personal and business accounts clean and separate. I am not angry. I am focused. At home, I create order. I label files and drives. I put a small fireproof safe in my office. I set up 2-factor authentication on everything. I learn how to check a file hash and store a checksum in an immutable log. I read about Massachusetts recording laws. It is an all-party consent state. That means I do not secretly record private conversations. I lean on emails, voicemails, and written notes. I am not going to win by catching anyone on a hot mic. I am going to win by building a record that does not wobble. Meanwhile, the household dynamic does not shift. In October, my mother asked me to rewrite a donor letter for an arts gala, then tells a reporter that Alex led the messaging. In early November, my father forwards me a pitch outline and asks for a refreshed narrative, then sends Alex to the meeting without me. My cousin Megan meets me for coffee and says, the office feels like a storm front. She hears whispers about redemptions and about asking clients for patience. She says people walk past closed doors. I have a short list of moments that make the next choice feel inevitable. The last one lands the Monday before Thanksgiving. I submit a basic request for access to a data room for a presentation. I am asked to revise. The system denies me. The ticket reads, not required for your function. That night, I sit in my kitchen with a cup of tea and look at my calendar for the week. The word family is written in pen next to Thursday. I think about what that word has meant in practice. I think about who I am when I am around them. Reliable, useful, quiet. I think about what they have taught me. Loyalty is demanded downward and questioned upward. Winning excuses most things. Image is substance if you repeat it enough. But they did not know what I was building. They did not know that I am already standing on my own 2 feet with clients who value ethics with a reserve to cover the fight with a file system that locks like a vault. They did not know that my calm is not surrender. It is preparation. That is when everything changes, and the change starts with a door on Commonwealth Avenue and a holiday built on gratitude. Thanksgiving lands on Thursday, November 28th, 2024. The air is oddly warm for Boston. I carry a pecan pie up the stone steps on Commonwealth Avenue and press the brass bell at 1:59. The door opens, and my parents stand shoulder to shoulder. My father says I am not invited. My mother says there has been a misunderstanding. Through the opening, I see the long table, the crystal, the silver, the place card at the end where my name used to sit. Alex wears deep burgundy. Jenna laughs at something my uncle's counsel once said. I hold the pie tighter. I manage a nod. I walk back down without a scene. The neighbor across the street has a stoop camera pointed at the sidewalk. Later, that camera will capture my father's banner inside the window that reads Family First and my quiet exit with the pie in both hands. I drive toward the Charles River and park by the water. I breathe with the rhythm of the rowers. I let the sting pass and leave only shape. But they did not know what I was building. The file structure is already in place. The dates are written in a notebook on my desk. The checksums live in an immutable log. I scroll to a contact I saved in August when I decided to prepare for the day. Respect would require action. Evan Ruiz, SEC Boston Regional Office. I press call. Evan answers from a family gathering. I keep my voice even. I tell him I have a preliminary packet. I tell him the pattern is not a one-off. I tell him I can show 5 years of movement that reads like liquidity smoothing with new money, covering redemptions, and reported returns drifting from the actuals. I had one thing that makes my jaw tighten. $1.2 million out of my trust in 3 equal tranches, each requiring dual authorization I did not give. He asks if I can file a TCR, the standard whistleblower form, with supporting documents. I say yes. He gives me the secure submission instructions. We set an early call for Friday to confirm receipt. That is when everything changes. I drive home and unlock the panel behind my bookshelf. I place the binder on my dining table and open my laptop. The process keeps me calm. I scan and name files using a strict convention. Date, source, subject. I attach a plain language summary to each bundle. I record hash values and log when and where each file is saved. I keep the originals sealed in a fireproof box. I create 2 encrypted copies on separate drives. One stays with me. One goes to my assistant Callie for a safe deposit box in the morning. I write a 1-page timeline. March 27th, first red flag. April 23rd, reporting format change. May 7th, access restriction tagged need to know. June 3rd, Alex reassigned my pitch. August 29th, I filed Northbridge Strategies. The dates pull me forward. I add the trust account statements. February, May, September, $400,000 each time. The custodial notes say dual auth completed. I did not sign. I cross-checked device IDs from my security alerts against the access logs. The stamps show a firm machine, not mine. I attach the call center reference number from my bank when I flagged irregular activity in September. I include the letter I sent that same day asking for a freeze on any non-routine movement and identity verification on file. I'm not angry as I bundle this. I am careful. Calm is a tool. Friday, November 29th, I file the TCR through the SEC portal at 8:50 a.m. I include my sworn statement. I include the index and the chain of custody notes. The system assigns a confirmation number. I email Evan the number and let him know a secure download link is live. I do not send the link to anyone else. I call my bank and request a formal fraud case on the trust withdrawals with a fresh case number. I place a credit freeze with the bureaus. I log each action with timestamps. What happened next shocks everyone, but not all at once. By mid-morning, Evan replies, he has my file. He cannot discuss internal steps, but he confirms a team is reviewing. He asks if I am willing to bring the physical drives to the office the following week. I say yes. I book a Monday morning slot for 8 a.m. I call my counsel and retain them. I set aside additional funds from my business account into my legal reserve. I label the envelope with the retainer agreement and file it in the safe. I change nothing on social media. I say nothing to anyone except Callie, who understands silence is part of the plan. The afternoon brings smaller tasks that matter later. I draft a brief investor alert template that explains how to ask hard questions without accusing anyone for the day when disclosure becomes necessary. I write a clean summary of the governance structure at Whitaker Capital Partners. It is a Delaware C corporation with bylaws that allow an extraordinary general meeting with proper notice and a standard proxy solicitation process. I do not intend to use any of it yet. I include it because understanding the rules is how you avoid being cornered by the game. Saturday begins like any other weekend in the city. Cold, light coffee streets still quiet. Evan sends a short note at 9:12 a.m. It says nothing specific. It asks me to be reachable. It is enough to tell me motion is in the air. I keep my phone charged and close. I walk through my evidence locker one more time, making sure the index matches the files. I back up new notes. I place the second drive in a sealed envelope. I add the seal number to my chain of custody. My mind drifts to the stoop camera across the street, to the way humiliation travels when an image connects with a theme. It will matter later that the clip exists, that it shows restraint, that it shows who I am when a door closes. 4 days later, on Monday, December 2nd, I get the call. I arrive at the SEC office at 7:53 a.m. because early is a form of respect. Evan meets me in the lobby. The conversation is brief and procedural. He cannot tell me the scope or timing of any action. He can accept my physical evidence with a receipt that lists each item by seal and serial number. I sign the receipt. He signs the chain of custody. I hand over a binder with my index, a printed timeline, and a summary of my role at the firm with attachments that show my access restrictions in May and my resignation in August. I include a short paragraph that explains the recording law in Massachusetts. I do not have secret audio. I have email, voicemail, text messages, and documents that speak clearly. I leave the office and step into the cold air with a steadier breath than I expect. I walk to a coffee shop on Milk Street and take a corner table. I write a short message to Callie. Drives delivered, index matched, home by 11. Then I open a calm, factual email to my bank's fraud unit with the SEC case confirmation number added, asking for any fresh movement on the trust to be flagged and held pending my written authorization. I include my police report number for identity theft as a supporting note. I keep everything in one thread so the record reads like a clean river. But they did not know what I was building, not really. They thought distance meant surrender. They thought silence meant fear. That afternoon, I buy a small bouquet at a street cart and take it home. I set it on my desk next to my notebook. I go for a run along the river at dusk and feel my lungs open in the cold. I cook something simple. I sleep. When I wake, I do not check my phone right away. I make coffee. I sit down. I start a new page in my notebook and write the date. December 3rd. Then I write one line. Wait for the next right step. The next right step does not require me to push. It requires me to be ready. By the time the first public hint breaks, the foundation is set. The packet is filed. The drives are logged. The bank has alerts on my trust. The credit bureaus have freezes on my profile. My counsel has a retainer and a copy of my index. My assistant has a sealed drive and a safe deposit box. My neighbor's stoop cam sits quietly until a building group starts sharing the clip of my quiet exit and the family first banner over my father's shoulder. The image will find the internet soon enough. The word loyalty will meet the word boundaries in one frame. That is where I stop pushing and start watching. The tide is turning, and I do not need to announce it. I need to hold my line. What happens next will move fast. It will also be public. And when it breaks into the open, I will already have the paper, the proof, and the calm to walk through it. I keep my head down and work. Northbridge Strategies grows in measured steps, not leaps. September revenue closes at $32,000. That tracks with the $12,000 a month biotech retainer and the $18,000 a month hospital contract, plus a small $2,000 media training project. October lands at $46,000 after a regional construction group signs at $24,000 a month for crisis planning on a high-profile site. November forecast to $58,000 with 2 one-time projects layered in. I document each contract deliverable and invoice in a clean ledger. 10% of every deposit moves into my legal reserve by rule, not mood. I repeat that motion until it feels like muscle memory. The systems matter. I add redundancy. Mirrored cloud storage. Checksum logs written to an immutable record. 2-factor authentication on everything. A manual ledger tucked into a fireproof safe. A chain of custody sheet for evidence that looks dull on paper and priceless in a courtroom. Calm is easier when the details are squared away. Callie keeps the trains moving. She color codes timelines, confirms hash values, and walks a sealed drive to a safe deposit box without needing a pep talk. I pay her well and on time because trust is built in the small things. But they do not know what I am building. They think I left the stage, not that I built my own. I attend a corporate governance webinar and take notes on Delaware bylaws. I draft a 1-page explainer on how an extraordinary general meeting can be called and how proxy solicitation works. I verify my control of the Norton Trust voting block by reading the trust instrument again, then asking outside counsel to confirm my reading and writing. Silence is not surrender, it is preparation. Meanwhile, my family performs stability. My father, Charles, gives a luncheon keynote about resilience in volatile markets. He poses for photos near a banner that carries the company logo. My mother Victoria posts from museum steps in a black dress with silver sleeves and a caption about legacy. My sister Alex logs daily time on the floor. She fields calls. She tells staff to hold the line. Jenna shares a LinkedIn post about client-centric care on November 21 and sprinkles in a few clapping emojis from colleagues. None of it answers the questions that matter. My cousin Megan texts me that office doors close more often. She hears the word redemptions in a tight whisper. She feels a current under the carpet. That is when everything changes, not because I push, but because the process I set in motion does what it is designed to do. On Monday, December 2nd, I walk into the SEC Boston office at 7:53 a.m. and hand over my evidence with a receipt that lists serial numbers and seals. Tuesday, December 3rd, a federal court grants emergency relief. The order freezes approximately $420 million tied to suspect flows and directs the preservation of records. The language is careful as it should be. It is not a finding of guilt. It is a protective action. I print the docket cover sheet, highlight the case number, and file it behind the submission confirmation in a tab labeled Orders. I forward the public link to my counsel with one line: received and saved. What happened next shocks everyone who relies on image to substitute for truth. The phones in Back Bay light up. Vendors call with hold requests. Clients forward the court order. Reporters start asking basic questions. Who signed? Who knew? Who benefited? I do not gloat. I do not post. I stick to process. I email my bank's fraud unit with the case number attached and ask that any non-routine movement from my trust be held until I sign in person. I keep my credit freezes in place. I write down the time, 9:21 a.m., and move on to my client work. The best leverage is a life that still functions while the storm begins. 5 days later, on Sunday, December 8th, a gala lights up the Boston Public Library courtyard. It is not a firm party. It is a charity gala where Whitaker Capital is a top sponsor. My construction client has a sponsor slot and asks me to deliver a 2-minute ethics micro-talk on crisis transparency. I accept with their permission and the event team's written approval. I stand under vaulted ceilings and speak in plain language about why transparency is a shield, not a threat. I use only public documents. I use a generic case timeline with dates that mirror the court docket. I display a slide that says, accountability is a form of respect. The room goes quiet the way a room does when people understand something they preferred not to name. I finish in under 120 seconds. I thank the host. I step off stage. I do not look for my family. If they are there, they hear the same words as everyone else. The clip that circulates later shows no names, just a plain theme. Tell the truth before the truth tells on you. But they did not know what I was building while I stayed small in their narrative. The growth is not only moral, it is professional. Mid-December, Boston Business Journal runs a small profile on Northbridge strategies in a feature about new firms that are scaling without courting hype. The piece mentions my September launch date, my current client mix, and my focus on ethics-forward crisis planning. It quotes a hospital communications lead who says, "Northbridge told us hard truths that saved us money and trust." I print the article and file it under press. 3 days later, I get the call that shifts the conversation from public narrative to corporate control. Wednesday, December 11th, a coalition of mid-size investors asks to speak. They hold a meaningful block of voting shares. They do not ask me to gossip. They ask me what the bylaws allow and whether I will stand behind a call for an extraordinary general meeting focused on governance and interim leadership. I answer in sentences that could live on paper. Whitaker Capital is a Delaware C corporation. The bylaws allow an EGM with proper notice. A proxy solicitation must follow Regulation 14A. The Norton Trust voting block is under my control since my 32nd birthday. Alone, it is not decisive. Paired with aligned holders, it can move a vote. They ask if I will join. I say yes, contingent on counsel and clean process. We retain outside counsel for the group and set the calendar. Notice goes out with precise language. The meeting date is December 28th. Meanwhile, the personal currents hit closer to shore. My mother texts me a photo of a corner table at a quiet restaurant and asks if we can meet for lunch. I thank her and decline by text attaching a neutral line. Counsel has advised me to limit private conversations while regulators do their work. My father leaves a voicemail that begins with, "We need to fix this as a family," and ends with, "You owe us more than this." I save the message. Alex sends a short email that reads, "I cannot sleep." She asks what I told the SEC. I reply that my submission is a matter of record and that any communications should go through counsel. She does not write back. Jenna tries a different path. LinkedIn. She sends a long note about misunderstandings and timing and feelings.